Well, here in Texas, early voting starts on Monday for the November election. And new polling from the Texas Politics Project shows that some of the big races are still pretty tight in the Lone Star State. Joining us now to talk about this new data, Dr. James Henson with the Texas Politics Project over at the UT of Austin. Jim, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be back with y'all.
It's good to see you as well. Let's start at the top of the ticket. The spread between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris isn't a huge surprise. Support for Trump, 51%, Harris at 46%. The last time you and I spoke back in September, that margin was the same. But more people are choosing between the two names. We talk about it every 4 years. But do you think Texas is winnable for Democrats at the top of the ticket in this race?
Well, I think it's still pretty unlikely. But if you're a Democrat, this is not terrible news. If you look back over the last few elections, Donald Trump won Texas by 9 points in 2016, a little less than that. Then he won it by about 5 3/4, call it 6, in 2020. So if you're in the range of 5 or so, you're not winning, but you're working down that curve. That's not great necessarily for this year, but in the longer term, it does show the state getting more competitive between the two parties.
It is something. Now, getting into issue-specific data, your polling found that on the issue of the economy, more voters, about 51%, trust the former president to handle that over the VP. But on the issue of abortion, the VP has the edge with 54% saying they trust her compared to the 28% who say they trust Trump on that. What do you think that data says about voters' priorities in this race?
Well, we know that, voters for most of the last year and a half have been focused, at least a big share of them, on the economy. So clearly, even though the gap is smaller on the economy than on abortion, those are good numbers for Donald Trump and for Republicans in Texas. But I would, note that the gap on abortion is really large, and it's that large because a lot of Republicans don't trust Donald Trump on abortion. Now, they don't necessarily trust Harris in large numbers, but a significant number of voters said they don't trust either. And I think this is one of the reasons you're seeing Democrats wanting to talk about abortion in the campaign and Republicans not wanting to talk about it.
Now, one issue we've seen come up more is the issue of race, age rather, in the race for the president. And since President Joe Biden exited the contest, more people are now focusing on former President Trump's age. What did your polling reveal about that?
Well, it found that, not surprisingly, a large number of Texas voters think that Donald Trump's age is a problem. We asked voters if they thought, the candidates would be too old to be president in 2025. About 45% said Donald Trump would be too old. But if you dig into that, the vast majority of those are Democrats and some independents. Fewer than 1 in 5 Republicans think that Trump will be too old. And so it's probably not much of a problem for him among his base.
Jim, there doesn't seem to be a lot of indecision in the race for the president, but when we last spoke in September, there was still a lot of undecided in the race for the U.S. Senate. So new numbers show that's changed. Back in September, 4% of voters said they planned to vote for someone other than who was listed on the ballot, while 14% said they hadn't thought about it. Now, incumbent Ted Cruz has 51% support, while Congressman Allred has 44%. So it seems a lot more people have made up their minds. What do you think has been the turning point for more Texans to get off the fence?
Well, there's a couple things going on here. I mean, we should point out to your viewers that, as we get close to the election, we begin to nudge voters that say they're undecided. And that does drive the number up a little bit. But that said, there are more voters paying attention. There's a lot more advertising going on. The election is just getting closer. It's one of the cliches of politics. It just happens to have even more than a grain of truth that after Labor Day weekend, people start paying more attention and the campaigns start working harder and buying more ads. I think your viewers would probably notice that there are a lot more campaign ads right now and have been for a couple weeks. That draws more people's attention to the race, but we should still note that there are a lot of people that I think are still a little fuzzy, and we still on that Senate race, and we expect to see those numbers continue to move in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the campaign here.
Now, we should mention the survey happened before Tuesday's debate. Do you think that will move the needle at all in the Senate race?
I don't think it's going to, but, one can never be sure. Typically, debates don't have a significant impact on these kinds of races, particularly on Senate races. And I don't think that in that debate we saw any big breakout moments. Both candidates had good moments that have been, reprocessed, if you will, on social media. I think both of the candidates in the Senate race got a little bit of what they wanted out of that debate. It was probably more important for Colin Allred in the sense that he's running statewide for the first time. But I don't expect the debate to shake this race up in any decisive way.
Dr. James Henson with the Texas Politics Projects, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
As always, good to see you.
Have a good weekend.